Hey, again, let's continue. Uh, well, as a starting point to the mainstream analysis of the labor demand, we can start by stating that um in case of labor demand, again, the focus has become the individual units. Here, we don't have individual units as actual individuals, but rather as companies. Uh, since in the model it's assumed that the companies, the producers, are demanding the labor power. Um, and well, again, let's return to the when we return to the mainstream analysis, you should remember again, labor and capital are now different things in the mainstream analysis. So capital is basically used for the means of structure and maybe infrastructure also. And labor is something different. So producers buy both labor and capital to do production in the mainstream analysis, uh, according to mainstream analysis. And in some ways, the model is very similar to the especially labor force participation and the hours of work analysis. And I will point the similarities when it comes. Um, so this is something we already told. Um, so the main analysis we do can be called marginal analysis or marginalist analysis. I mean, there might be slight differences with how it is told. But the main idea is when people buy something, they compare two things. They look to the cost. They concentrate on last unit. If they buy, for example, eight different workers, hired eight different workers, for each different worker, they make a particular type of comparison. And if they buy eight workers, it means this comparison should be made and hold true for the eight workers. So it's okay if we concentrate on the eighth worker, the last unit, the employer has bought or hired. And for each worker, the comparison is between the cost that he or she pays for them for hiring worker or buying labor power, and the benefit the worker brings to the company. If benefit is higher than the cost, then the employer will hire the worker. And if the benefit is lower than the cost, then basically the worker won't hire the worker. And since the basically uh, employer has hired eight workers, basically for each one of them and the last of them also, the uh, benefit the worker brings should be higher than the cost the worker brings. And for the ninth worker they hire, the benefit should be lower than the cost the worker brings. You should note something here. In mainstream analysis, actually also in Marxian analysis, this is also true for that. In almost everywhere in the analysis, we take the workers as uniform. I mean, which means we assume all workers are same. They have same productivity. They are same. So when they make comparison, they don't make those comparisons because I mean, if for example eight workers more brings more benefit compared with cost, and when ninth worker brings less benefit compared with his or her cost, that's not because ninth worker is more lazy. That's because the working conditions doesn't allow the ninth worker to bring the company as much benefit as the eight workers bringing. So all workers are same. They are exactly the same in the analysis. Um, so again, I mean, this is in case of oranges. You have eight oranges. If you buy eight oranges, for each orange you make comparison, and basically if you buy eight orange, that would mean eight orange will bring you more benefit than the cost of the 8th orange, and 9th orange will bring you less benefit compared with the cost of the orange. In this case, benefit is in form of utility. In case of employer, the benefit is in form of profit. Of course, what if the benefit or the utility, for example, orange brings first increases and then decreases? In that case, I mean, if that was the case, maybe the consumer could wait until the utility he get from the successive amount of oranges reach to its highest possible value, and then, for example, from the first orange, he might get a utility which is equal to $5, although the price is $10. But he might know at the third orange, the utility he will get will reach to equivalence of the $15, while the price will be again $10. So he will wait until this. He will only do typical marginal type of calculation after the orange, the utility, after the point, the utility he or she gets from the oranges reach to its maximum point. And after that, for each oranges, he or she will make that comparison and stop buying oranges when benefit is less than the cost. Because I mean, at the first point, by waiting, even though the first orange doesn't bring as much benefit as the cost, if he buys second or third oranges, ultimately the benefit will exceed the cost, and the consumer might take this into account. However, in case of consumer theory, we have basically diminishing marginal utility, so we assume that always the marginal utility we got from a product is decreasing. In case of workers, we could assume that basically the product each new worker brings might initially increase the production level increase each worker is bringing might initially be more or increasing when you add more workers. And in that case, again, the calculation will be, well, first calculation our employer will make is whether if he waits to the point where the marginal product reaches to its maximum level, will he or she is able to get any profit. If by hiring the number of workers which maximize marginal profit will bring him at least some profit, then our employer will hire those workers up to the point. We'll decide to hire those workers up to the point when marginal product will reach its maximum point. And after that, he will again look for each additional worker when we decide to buy each additional worker. Once marginal product starts to have a negative slope, or I mean starts decreasing when you add more workers, then our employer will again start to make comparison, as we have mentioned. I mean, for each particular worker, it doesn't need to make the comparison in bulk level, but for each individual worker, it can make the comparison and compare them again, the benefit each worker brings and the cost each worker brings. Cost is usually constant, which is price in case of oranges and wages in the case of the workers, and we assume it is taken from the market. Of course, the benefit will change. In case of oranges, as I said, marginal utility. In case of the employer, it is the marginal product produced by this additional worker, or increase in production level created by this additional worker, times the price of the product, which is also fixed if we are in a competitive market, and basically the company is not able to influence the production, the price level. Again, of course, in case of wage, again we assume competitive market, so the company is not able to influence the wage level. So before starting to our central analysis, today's central analysis of short run, I should mention the short run conditions, and the first thing that should be mentioned is short run and long run are not defined periods. So it's not like short run is 1 year, long run is 10 years. It can change actually. I mean, there is no fixed duration for the short run and long run. In some cases, long run might be as short as 1 hour. In some cases, long run might be as long as 1 century. For example, if you think if you define a short run as a period when the prices remain fixed, if we are in period of hyperinflation, in that case, the prices might change significantly, even in an hour. But if you are living in ancient times, even in a century, prices might not change significantly. So basically, you make a definition at which basic mostly states that in short run something stays fixed, and the actual length of short run and long run is decided by, actual duration. This variable remains more or less fixed. More or less means, if you want to really make it empirical, it might be, for example, it should not increase or decrease. Its amount should not change more than, for example, 10% or 5% or 1%. It depends on how precise you want it to be. So it should be more or less stable, as I said. In case of the labor demand analysis, what is fixed is the capital. Capital amount is fixed, which means infrastructure and the machinery is fixed. You cannot increase their amount, their quality also. Technology level and prices are fixed even in the long run. Even in the long run, they will be fixed. So let's continue. So if capital is fixed, if our employer is willing to increase his output level, the only thing he or she can do is hire more workers. But since capital amount is fixed, well, basically I have made the same analysis in the introduction to economics class, and there I mentioned when you add more workers, at first they work more efficiently. They are basically able to cooperate with each other. So marginal productivity of each worker is higher than the previous one at first, and that's because when you have two workers, if one worker is producing 10 units, two workers can produce more than 10 units per worker, for example, maybe 15 units per worker. So with one worker you produce 10 units. In that case, with two workers you produce 30 units. So the production increases by 20 units with your second worker, more than marginal productivity of second worker is higher than the first worker. For a while this might continue, but after a certain point, the existing amount of capital, that means machinery and infrastructure, basically limits your potential for further increases in production level. At that point, adding more worker might still increase the production level, but it will increase less and less when you add more workers. So you will reach a point where marginal productivity will start to decline, basically. In this analysis, however, this part where marginal product of worker is increasing is taken out. So it is assumed that marginal product of workers are continuously declining. So we will continue in the next part. We are very close to 15 minutes mark. So see you in the next part.